All right, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Goele and I have two why nots for you today, and the first one is,
why not being hired exactly and precisely because you're a woman?
And the second one is, why not acknowledge that male-dominated society is a society that is not good for anyone, and that feminism is not only about women trying to surpass a male-dominated society, but we will also try to give you reasons for why there's vested interest for men to surpass a society based on domination.
Me, myself, as a young woman about to graduate and about to be hopefully employed by an employer, I want to be hired because of my skills. I hope that I will be hired because I have some skills and not because I'm a woman. But why not? Let me start off at the very beginning, and that was me being born. Now, this may come as a shocker, I was born out of a woman. Why am I telling you this? Because being given birth to is pretty much as far as it goes concerning the accredited role of women in my life. I was even put on this earth by the help of a man. My mom's gynecologist. I was given the surname of a man, my father. I was baptized by a man, my priest. I was governed by men. My local mayor, Flemish Minister-President, Belgian Prime Minister, European President, both Council and Commission, they've all been men. From the day I was born until this very day, all these people were men. I was taught by mostly men. The higher up you go in education, the fewer women around. Ghent University, Politics Department, I had 0 female professors. College of Europe, Economics Department, no female professors. All of these people were men. Amen.
The most striking thing about this is that throughout all of our lives, all of these men have been telling us that we can become absolutely whatever we want, that we can become doctors, that we can become professors, that we can become prime ministers, that we can even become presidents.
Great, delightful, and thanks for saying, because otherwise I might have not known. I mean, I do assume that the constitution of my country does not state that its prime minister should basically have a penis. I assume it doesn't, neither does the rule book of my university. But that does not really imply that the prime minister or the professor is effectively going to be female at some point, does it? It clearly does not.
There's one main exception to this, though. There's just this one thing that we as women will never achieve, and that is obtaining the post of a priest.
Yeah, exactly. Priest, nuh-uh. I mean, if there is one institution that I have to thank, it's the Catholic Church. Because they put their law where their mouth is. Thank you for that. They explicitly and particularly exclude women from becoming priests. Therefore, I will not try my whole life to become a priest. I will not try my whole life achieving something that I can clearly not achieve. It's basically growing a penis. It will not work. Whereas the constitution of my country does not specifically exclude women from becoming prime ministers. So I might as well waste my whole life trying to achieve something that's clearly also out of reach. And I use the word waste because all of the prime ministers in my country so far have been male. Now, this reality sort of reminds me of a children's joke. It's a joke that my professor, male professor, in statistics used to tell us to show us the difference between correlation and causality. Now, the joke was like this. Once upon a day, a man notices that his neighbor is throwing sugar on the lawn. Surprised by these facts, the man asks his neighbor why he's doing that. The neighbor says it's to keep the tigers out. The man, even more surprised by these facts, thinks by himself, there is no tigers out here. So he confronts his neighbor and says, dude, there is no tigers out here. For the neighbor to cleverly answer, you see it's working. Now, you do not need a graduate course in statistics to realize what's going on here. It's not because the neighbor is throwing sugar on the lawn that the tigers are not coming, because tigers are not there. There might be correlation between the sugar on the lawn and the absence of tigers, but there is no causality. If you take away the sugar from the garden, tigers are not going to show up, because tigers weren't there in the first place. Now, if you take the peanuts requirement out of the Constitution, female prime ministers might not show up because females weren't around in the first place.
So that got us wondering, what is this thing that prevents women from becoming prime ministers and professors? What if this thing that prevents women from becoming prime ministers and professors is prime ministers and professors in the first place? Because who appoints prime ministers?
Politicians and other political parties having appointed prime ministers in the past.
And who appoints new professors?
Professors?
And what do all of these have in common?
They are all men. Would it not make sense if people have to appoint other people to become their peers? Would it not make sense if prime ministers and professors have to appoint new prime ministers and new professors, that they use upon these candidates standards that they used upon themselves, the examples? Would it not make sense if most of the examples have been male, if the template was male, that the copy is very likely to be male as well?
But let us not be as narrow-minded as to think that this tendency applies to professors and prime ministers only. Because if we look further, then it gets us wondering, why is it that we see so few women in the boards of directors in large companies?
One of those male directors once told me that they appoint people looking at their background and their experience elsewhere. Now, I do not master the art of logic, but I do sense some viciousness in that circle, because women do not get appointed because they lack experience, but hey, women might also lack experience because they're never appointed. As long as most of the high-ranking positions in our society are mostly taken up by men, could it not be that the skills required for those high-ranking positions, such as leadership, are also defined in a way that they apply to most men and to fewer women?
And most importantly, if you really think about it, if you think of the necessary requirements in order to fill up high-ranking positions, and all your references of this necessary requirements are male, then isn't it the case that these necessary requirements are biased to be portrayed in a male version only?
And as a woman trying to make it in a man's world, as a woman trying to become prime minister, a leader, a boss, a manager, are we subconsciously trying to reshape our character to become more male, to sort of stand the penis test? Maybe I am. Maybe we all are.
And if so, what's the solution?
Well, it might be simple. Maybe the solution to too much penis is more balls. Maybe we need more balls, people with guts, people who dare to appoint people exactly and precisely because they're women. Because, not because we're equal, because we're different. Because we know that we are equal by law, but the law, the Constitution, is like the sugar on the lawn. We are different by nature and by nurture. Why do we have to live up to male standards, to male-defined skills and abilities, instead of introducing some female ones? Or even better, some unbiased ones? In today's society, it seems that feminism is like a sort of F word, and we as women, we want to be hired because of our skills, not because we're women. And I fully agree. In a world where these skills are not biased by sex, in a world where these skills are not defined in a male way, but we're still in a world where most of these positions are taken up by men. So maybe the skills for these positions are also taken up by men. So why not being hired exactly because you're a woman?
So in the future, if I ever get employed, I will never look at this as if I got employed just because I'm a woman. I got employed because I'm a woman, and that's absolutely okay.
And that choice, that takes some balls, and I happen to be just that woman who appreciates some balls. Talking about balls, guys out there, now it's your turn.
Feminism is not only about women trying to surpass a male-dominated society. And feminism is not about us trying to take something away from you guys. But in order to understand why we should embrace feminism, whether we are men or women, it is very important to understand what the damages of a society based on domination are.
So patriarchy is a social order thriving on normative binaries, promoting competition over cooperation. Wait, what?
Exactly. A male-dominated society goes much further than simple or pure male domination or men getting the most higher-ranked positions or the leadership roles in our societies. It is a social order that takes its sources from predetermined categories that apply and are projected on us in daily life. It's a social order that basically thrives onto such oppositions as strong and weak, leader and follower, pragmatic and impractical, cool and emotional, and all of these things that are projected on us by the society that we live in. Because imagine a society that doesn't give you a predefined interpretation over who's supposed to behave in a strong way and who's supposed to behave in a weak way. In such a society, domination not only wouldn't be possible, but it also would enable people to relate to each other in other ways than by dominating each other.
And that's exactly why patriarchy does not only define our expectations of women, it also defines our expectations of men. Patriarchy sort of created this ideal man, this ideal concept of masculinity. You know, men have to be rough. Most armies are filled with men, and men have to hide emotion and affection because, hey, otherwise you're super gay. Men have to be bread providers. They have to be the ones who support their family because you do not want to become a stay-at-home dad. Who even invented that word? Guys have to be strong. Men are defined by patriarchy just as much as women are. And that got us thinking, these male privileges, are they really privileges? Well, maybe not. Maybe they're not privileges. Maybe the way we see it, patriarchy does not only also define men, maybe patriarchy defines men in the first place.
And that we had a lot of arguments to illustrate this situation, but because of the time pressure, we really had to pick out just the most important and the most crucial ones that basically affect the way we relate to each other on a daily basis. And I think it's a good point to start off by looking at the fact that men are expected to endure hazardous conditions in their life, and not only by taking more dangerous jobs, that's sort of a given because you guys have to be strong, but it's also a view of the expectation of you to wage wars, because this is why the army has been created for you guys, to sort of expect you to protect your territories. And further on, the expectation that you guys have to hide your weaknesses because weaknesses are not fitting the template of the ideal of masculinity, which basically has huge consequences if you think about it, especially in terms of seeking help for physical and mental health issues. But further on, the problem with the ideal of masculinity is that whoever doesn't fit into this template will always feel anxious and will always feel insecure. And that basically enables this kind of relating between, especially between men themselves, into in terms of dominating each other rather than talking to each other. And more often than not, unfortunately, we as women absorb this ideal of masculinity, whether we want it or not, and we project it on you, and we expect you to fit this model. And whoever doesn't fit this model and doesn't fit the expectations of what constitutes appropriate male behavior or male appearance is basically rejected, including romantically rejected. But what I think is the most problematic aspect of it is what I call emotional disengagement. The fact that patriarchy has taught you guys to emotionally disengage from the people around you, to hide your affection, to hide your feelings, to never be able to really manage them or communicate them. So basically, such really manageable situations as losing a job or being dumped by your girlfriend can turn into these huge tragedies that you can't really cope with. And that is because you've been taught to hide your feelings and to not talk about them because they're a sign of weakness. But further on, in your job life, if you think about it, women are indeed not having the job prospects that you have. Men do have better job opportunities, are better paid, and generally have more chances at being promoted in most companies or even in the public sector. And the immediate consequence for you guys is the fact that you will always be suspicious of the women that are there with you in your life. You're always going to be tempted to wonder, is this woman with me because she loves me?
Or is she because I can offer her opportunities that society has taken away from her, including financial security, job prospects, social status, or whatever you want? Further on about family life, you will probably encounter it in your future careers, and you will discover that being the family type kind of guy is not a very welcome thing when you get a job. So if you're the kind of man that like to spend time with their wife and with their children, that is not going to make you look good for your employer. And my last point, I guess, going back to the argument of emotional disengagement, is the fact that because of the values that patriarchy's been teaching you and projecting on you, most men find it very, very hard to relate to their children. And most men never feel fully appreciated by their fathers.
Now, finally, how can we overcome this? First of all, we need to recheck these gender ideals, these binaries. We should not promote or encourage ambitious women to act more like men or like ideal men. This is not going to create gender equality. And also, in trying to overcome these gender ideals, these binaries, we might want to try to introduce a new concept into our social order. We might want to introduce vulnerability to our way of thinking, because vulnerability is a universal concept. It applies to both men and women. It knows no age, no social background, no educational background. There is no clear strong or weak in vulnerability. There is only the refusal to accept it. Thank you.
Thank you.